welcome everyone to the Cosmic Coffee Chats. This is our first episode. If you guys have been in my chat for a while, you might have remembered that this was something I started solo. However, I always felt that there was a little piece missing, and the piece that was missing was a community aspect to the podcast that I really wanted. I wanted it to be less about me coming on here and lecturing you guys about a topic, 'cause that's very much what it felt like. And I really wanted community. I wanted discussion around these topics. So I thought long and hard about how I could make that happen. And I finally settled on, well, why don't I just invite other like minded people to get on here and talk about these topics? So we have Lana and Zara, and we'll each get into our introductions separately here in a minute. But essentially today what we're going to talk about is one of the things that I think is probably the basics, if you will, of anything witchcraft related, energy related, any I just completely lost, all thoughts in my head, but we're going to start with the basics, and we're going to be talking about meditation, what meditation is, what it means, and how to protect yourself. So protection, magic, energy protection, and all that good stuff. And you guys will just have to get used to the chaos energy that I bring, because that's just what it's like in my brain 24/7. I'm notorious for starting a sentence and just forgetting who I am in the middle of it and just blanking completely. So I am going to pause, and I am going to let my co-hosts introduce themselves, and hopefully they'll do a much better job at my little intro there. So who wants to go first?
Am Lana Borealis. I am a multidimensional healer and guide, and I have been a practicing witch since, well, puberty. Um, and
The
I
intros
work a
aren't
lot
easy.
with,
Intros are not easy.
I I work a lot with helping people shift out of stuck patterns and situations and really helping them expand into higher levels of light and freedom and really embodying their truest selves. And so, yeah, I'm Lana. It's lovely to be here with all of you.
All right, we're up.
So, everybody, hi, welcome and hello. And I'm super excited to hang out with all you guys on our first episode of Cosmic Coffee Chats. So, Zara Starchild, I am a multidimensional healer as well, channel teacher. My absolute favorite thing to teach and work with, coaching and mentoring people with, is awakening their light body and being able to access all of those multidimensional gifts that Lana was talking about, extrasensory perceptions and such, manifesting with the light body. So it is a really exciting to be here and open up this conversation with these amazing women, witches and shamanica, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah.
I guess it's officially. So I am Laura Witch Rune, but you can just shorten that to Rune. Talking about myself is really hard for some reason, but I would call myself an eclectic witch, and lately I've really been leaning into the term death witch. If you know me, that makes a lot of sense, because one of my favorite things to focus on is spirit communication. I love ghosts, I love horror, I love all of it. And so I've been streaming on Twitch for about 3 years now, mainly doing it started with horror content that kind of evolved into tarot and astrology. I've been working on becoming a coach, but help people who think they either have a gift or they just want to start their journey on their own um, path, and they don't know where to start, or they don't feel like they have the support group. So that's kind of Okay, Drake said I have to talk in the mic. My bad. Hopefully this is better. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much who I am and what I do. So I've been, already kind of leaning towards creating more witchy content, and this is just an extension of that. All right, Drake gave me the thumbs up. I sound better now. So, um, this is our first episode. So this is a learning experience for me. Like I said, I've been streaming for 3 years, but for some reason now I feel like this is day one completely. But our goal here is to essentially every other week we're gonna get on here in this live format with you guys, and we're gonna have a fun, um, witchy topic to talk about. And yeah, so our topic for today is really, I think, one of the most important things to start with if you're even thinking about starting a spiritual journey of any kind, and that's protection magic and energy protection, and also just how to meditate. Because I know one of the questions I get for people who come into one of my streams and they say, Rune, I want to learn how to read tarot, or I want to learn how to get into astrology, or I want to learn how to talk to ghosts and get involved in spirit communication. And my advice has always been, how often are you meditating? Know how to like meditate and go into yourself and really understand yourself essentially. And if the answer to that is no, I always strongly suggest people to start there. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today, and it's just gonna be an open conversation. So one of the things that I had to start off with, I think, is maybe just starting with the question of what is meditation and what is not. Who wants to start off strong with that one?
I mean, I can start with so when I first started, I guess, really working more actively in the sort of magical realms, I started with shamanic journeying. And for me, that was a really helpful way to start because, you have a drum beat. So you have something that's already setting up that sort of sacred space, already getting your brain sort of aligned to a different like reality. Whereas like when I first started trying to like sit in meditation, it was really hard. But when I eased into it through the shamanic journeying, it really helped prepare me um, for that later sitting. And so, yeah, meditating, I feel like, is really just shifting the state of your awareness from that sort of like active awareness to a slightly more passive awareness. That's how I would define it, really.
I think that's actually something. So if you know me, you know I'm a note taker, and if I'm doing any kind of like presentation or live stream or like YouTube video, I always have notes. And one of the things I did put in my notes is talking about the difference of what active versus passive meditation is, because I think there's some forms of meditation, and a lot of the types of meditation that I do are actually very active. They're very intentional. Um, and to be quite honest, sometimes it's extremely hard. Like, I have never found meditating to be particularly easy, but the rewards have always been worth it. And then there are those meditations that are more um, passive, which are more, those are the more like stress relieving ones for me. So I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
examples of the more passive ones. I think maybe for me it would just be like, I find like music meditation very very passive for me, where I can just put a song on and I can kind of just see, um versus something like uh mindfulness meditation I find to be extremely active, because you're always watching these thoughts pass you by, and it's always this back and forth of when something starts creeping up and you start like obsessing over a thought, you're just like, okay, okay, let me get myself back on track. Like, let me get myself back on the focus point, which is the now. And that's very active meditation, I would say. So definitely many, many forms.
think it's kind of
Yeah, I
important
agree.
to come into meditation with like what is the purpose, right? So like why are you meditating? And that would
Intention.
determine whether or not you're going with the passive or the active, right? So if you're coming to meditation to still the mind or to relax or to de-stress, then you're looking for, and you can also kind of frame it into the masculine and feminine energies as well. So the passive is like I'm going to receive. I'm going into meditation to receive, to connect with spirit and receive the blessings, the insights, the new perspectives, the higher perspectives, the higher vibrations, or going into meditation to receive healing, even for the physical body, versus I'm going into meditation to um uh going into meditation to see vision, extract knowledge, right? So like some of the mediumship stuff that we do, or the remote viewing kind of thing, or sort of putting your feelers out into the choice points of your future would be an active meditation. And like you're saying, with the intentional focus for manifestation, that's the other part of the active. So it really starts with what you're wanting, what's your goal, where are you coming from when you're approaching um, a meditation practice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I did just want to call out something Drake said is one of the, at least in like the forms of meditation I do, and this was like a almost like a meditation myth, if you will. Like when I first started learning meditation, or when people think about meditation, they think that means that you have to erase everything from your mind. And let me tell you, if I could do that, my life would be so much better. But that's simply just not how it works. And I think it's more about being okay and accepting with what's in your mind. It's a very um non judgment kind of zone. So I really did like that call out, because I think that when people start to try and start a meditation practice and they're like, oh well, I can't sit still, or I can't stop thinking. I wish I could stop thinking sometimes. And even after years of practice, I find the more I meditate, the more I'm thinking. Um, so yeah, exactly, Drake. It's less about emptying your mind and more about accepting your thoughts and then understanding them if you want to. Not every thought has to have a reason. Sometimes we just think things. That's just the way it is. We don't have to like always go into this deep dive of like, oh, why am I constantly thinking about what I'm having for dinner? You're probably just hungry. Like it's as simple as that. Um, and so that's something that I think I really struggled with when I first started on my journey. That instead of just being, I was just getting upset with myself because I couldn't stop thinking.
Yeah. Something that I found really helpful for sort of, I wouldn't say really clearing the mind, but just allowing it to kind of sit back is I like chanting. It's not really chanting. It's more, I do sounds into the universe. So like, oh, and I send those O's like way deep into outer space and just sit with that and allow that sound to just like flow through me. And it's really helpful for me to kind of bring everything down and to just allow whatever's happening in my mind just to be. And then that sound is like a vessel, or not vessel, maybe a vessel, sure, a vessel. The sound is like a vessel for my consciousness to sort of flow with. And then, so it kind of like leaves the other stuff behind and allows my awareness to shift into some other sort of space.
Yeah, that I think that vocal point is what I was trying to say. That's going to be different for everyone. I know music is really helpful for people. Um I would also suggest if you're just starting your meditation journey and you need help, like, because let me back up and just say, while I don't think the goal of meditation, well, I know the goal of meditation is not to quiet your mind. You should still have some kind of focal point to come back to if you find yourself like spiraling off into space somewhere. So it could be music, it could be chanting. When I first started, guided meditations were extremely helpful for me. You had someone essentially telling you what to do. They're like, okay, I'm gonna walk you through this. And now for me, it's a candle flame. So I'll just light a candle and I'll just stare at that thing. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. Um, but yeah, and like this is also just like I feel like meditation 101. I feel like meditation could be multiple episodes in and of itself because I could go on about this topic for forever. Um,
Totally.
yeah. So I think that that pretty much I think sums up the basics of what I would say meditation. I don't know any other thought. Well, yes. So Spirit said measuring your breath. I think your breath is like one of the most solid ways you can practice meditation. In essence, like that's you. Like your breath is you. Um, However, if you're like me and you have anxiety, sometimes listening to your breath is makes you a little bit more anxious. But agreed, your breath could be a good one. Um, could be anything really.
It can be anything. And usually the purpose is for a lot of the meditations for purpose of calming the mind or training the mind, mastering the mind. And sounding, like Lana said, is so powerful. Chanting is so powerful. And one of the beautiful things about sounding or chanting is that you can do it sort of anytime. It doesn't, if you're chanting, if you choose a chant or a mantra to silence your mind, it's very incredible spiritual tool for shifting out of that anxiety state and the mental spinning that a lot of people find themselves in, those pre-programmed thought forms that just spin in circles. And when we find ourselves in that energy, which is usually a draining kind of energy when we're in that mental spin, either
Yeah.
ruminating about something of the past, worried about the future, or uh, what was the other thing I was going to say? I'm not sure. But when we're in those thought forms, when we're in those mental spins, um, chanting a mantra to get your mind off of it, to
Yes.
shift your energy into something positive or in the direction that you want to go is so, so powerful. And the toning that Lana was talking about, also really, really powerful, just to feel your own sound
Yeah.
leaving you and expanding out the world like an energetic wave. Do you use that, Lana? Do you use that for meditation, or not for meditation, but for manifestation? I'm curious, like if when you're sounding, do you send like the sound wave out and imagine it coming back as the manifestation?
Oh, I never have, but that's a fabulous idea.
See.
I've been having for a long time, like sort of like dreaming about getting like a big giant gong and just going in the woods and like playing that gong and feeling the sound waves
Well, you got to
go out
do
and
it. You got to do it.
change the timelines and stuff. Yeah.
That's so interesting. This thought
Oh.
of like sound because I was like for some reason like when I ask like my spirit guides and that's definitely another episode topic. When I ask my spirit guides for any kind of like guidance, it always comes through to me in a YouTube video. The next time I open YouTube, there's always some video and they're like, "You need to hear this message," and I always roll my eyes, but then it's like I actually did need to hear the message, and they were talking about using sound, and this is kind of like gonna go over my head, but using sound to manipulate energy, and they used the metaphor of like plucking a guitar string, and they
Yeah.
were essentially like, you I see you causing waves in like I don't know the words they use, but like in the cosmos because you're plucking this guitar string and someone's noticing. they don't really understand it yet, but someone's noticing this like energy shift that you're just sitting here plucking this guitar string. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say something. You're talking about
Do either of you guys speak in light language?
and what?
Light language?
Well, I would call what I do more like toning than light language.
Mhm.
It's yeah, more just like reaching up and pulling certain frequencies in
Pulling
and
the
make I
tones.
don't really necessarily do the like I do stuff, but like more of like ooh, and letting that flow through me.
Nice. How about you, Rune?
So my meditations are very if there's any sound that's involved, it's generally just like music, but it's usually very internal for me. Um and this is what I was going to say. This reminds me of what I was going to say. Again, this might be a completely another topic, so I won't branch off too much. Um but when I meditate, they're usually very short, and something that I was going to bring up is um sometimes when you are in meditation, you are going to have physical and like bodily experiences. So you're going to feel it in like different areas of your body. That happens a lot with me. Um it's actually kind of wild. I've like had thoughts for a while that like it's some kind of like channeling. I don't know. I'm exploring that. Um but I have a lot of like bodily experiences. And one thing that I wanted to bring up about meditation in particular related to that is if you are someone, I know we were talking about like anxiety and how to like things that you can do in the meditation that can kind of like bring you back to focus. But I also kind of just wanted to throw out there that sometimes if you're in a meditation, it's also completely okay to just stop it completely. And this is something that like also when I was learning, I was like, oh, you have to try and hold it for as long as possible. You have to like work through everything that comes up and try to hold it as much as possible. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to stop the meditation. And this comes through a lot, I think, in people who have experienced a lot of trauma. So when you start meditating, and you wouldn't think this happens because you're like, wait, meditation is supposed to help me like get past all that. It's supposed to help me heal. Um, but a lot of the times, in order for you to heal, you kind of have to like it almost opens up a lot of like older wounds sometimes when you first start meditating. So that's just something I wanted to call out that if you do find yourself in meditation and you find yourself spiraling and you're having kind of like those body sensations, it's totally okay to just get up and be like, no, I'm going to read this another time. So, how did I
Yeah.
get on that topic? I think it's because we were asking about like, what do you do when you're meditating? And I'm like, oh, I just have a lot of body experiences. But yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few different channels in regards to how we receive those psychic senses, and
mm-hmm.
some of us are embodiers,
Yeah,
which sounds like you might be. I am. I didn't realize that that was an actual channel. To as compared to like the people that are like seeing everything and like everything's in super techno vivid psychic sight. There's those of us that are actually get like we receive the information through our bodies,
yep,
or we process the information through our bodies,
yep,
or you know what you're talking about is the trauma that starts to, it's like your body is, for those of you that are experiencing what Rune was talking about, you've experienced a lot of trauma, your body is generally holding on to that trauma, and that's why it's really helpful to seek out like a local Reiki person or energy healer, because they will help hold the space for you to release that trauma. If you're doing it on your own through meditation, you can stop, but what's happening is like you're kind of opening a space where your body can relax, and your body's like, oh, I can relax now. We're going to heal this now. Oh, I can release this now. And that's when it starts to come up, because you've created a little space
yep,
to feel all the stuff that we've been repressing.
yeah,
So another great way to process that in the meditation is to stay in meditation, but get up and actually move,
Yeah.
like a
Mm.
moving meditation, like a yoga. And then if you're doing like a yoga and or stretching, and you can also sound it out, like it gets really like it's a beautiful experience. Beautiful is not the right word. It's an ugly, ugly experience. However, the release is so tremendous and huge if you just
Yeah.
allow yourself to get ugly with your stretching and your sounding and your facial movements just to work out whatever is being held in the body.
Yeah. If you gotta cry, cry it out. If you gotta scream, scream it. You gotta do what you gotta do. Um, but that yeah, that makes a lot of sense because your body is essentially like, oh yes, like I'm letting go, but your mind's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that because that's what you're
I don't
so
want to feel
used to
that. Yeah.
doing. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's just disclaimer there. So I think that just kind of goes back to like my I would say meditation is so fundamental, but it is not easy. And I think hopefully if you're in here and you're listening to this and you're like, I tried meditation, like I wanted to do that, but I just stopped because it was too difficult or it was bringing up really painful things. Um, I mean, I'm not a doctor or a therapist or anything, so obviously if you're having a tough time, like please seek out help and talk to who you need to. But also, I promise if you keep working at it and you keep doing it, you're going to get to a spot where it becomes natural for you. So, and it's
Yeah,
definitely
I would
not one
also
of those
add
things that's like an overnight success. For sure, not an overnight success.
totally. And like also like there are so many different ways to do it. Like you
Yeah.
can do a dancing meditation, a walking meditation, a rolling on the ground meditation, a
Stop,
staring
drop,
at the
and roll.
trees meditation. Yeah, like it doesn't have to be like where you're sitting in one spot and you're trying to shut your mind up. It can, there's so many different like ways of getting into it's like, think about the phrase meditative state. You can be in a
Mhm.
meditative state washing the dishes, you know?
Yeah, I do it all the time. I'm like working and then I'm somewhere else.
Totally.
But
One of my favorite ones to do just like in the spur of the moment, I don't even intend to do it usually. It's just I start to focus on the sound
yeah,
around me, especially like outside where you hear the bugs in the trees or the frogs and then you go further and you hear the airplanes and the traffic further and further away and just try to like hear as much as you can hear in the space. And as you expand your consciousness with your sound, then the brain starts to make the interpretation of all those sounds, where they're coming from, and you start to get data from all of the surrounding area.
data analyst here. We love some good data. Um, but yeah. And then so what would you guys say? I mean, I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what would you guys like recommend as like the first thing to someone who maybe comes to you and is like, okay, what do I do first? Like, how do I start incorporating a meditation practice into my life?
Yeah, I would personally just say 5 minutes a day, whether you're sitting and staring at something, or you're sitting with your eyes closed, or you're just standing and swaying, just something easy that feels okay. And you don't have to overcomplicate it in any way. Just some way that you're just like either walking in a safe space where you can just like stare at the ground, or sitting and swaying kind of like I am now. And just do that for 5 minutes, and then try to do it for 5 minutes the next day, and try to do it for 5 minutes the next day. And that's it, really. Like that's what I would say.
What about you?
I would really, if someone were coming to me and asking me that, I would really be tailoring it to um, what what's going on for them. What's going on for them? What is the reason? Not the reason, but the goal. What's the goal? So
Yeah.
if it's like anxiety stuff, right? If it's anxiety stuff, nervousness stuff, um, I might suggest something like chanting,
Mhm.
or even just like placing your hand on your heart and saying something along the lines to yourself, like, right now, everything is okay. Right now, I'm breathing. Right now, I'm warm and dry. Right now, I have a roof over my head. Right now, and just kind of like repeat to yourself everything that's going good in your life in the moment, everything that you have to be grateful for in the moment. If your mind is going into the future and projecting catastrophe or, ruin, right? So like I've had these experiences in my life where um I'd been laid off from work, and family stuff was going on and this was going on. And I would wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning with just like panic attacks of like, oh my God, what if I don't get another job? What if I'm gonna become homeless? What if, and the what ifs start going. And so for that what if mind that a lot of people have or sometimes fall into, it would be that kind of a thing, like, right now I'm okay, right now everything's okay, right now, right now, right now, right now. So that's
Yeah.
one of the suggestions that I would throw out there to the world.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I feel like it really depends on what your goal is, because even like in my own practice, my like stress relieving meditation is a lot different than like if I'm trying to get into a space for like spirit communication or something, and they look different. And I think at this point I just kind of like fall into it. Um but yeah, I think that's a good starting point. I had one and then I forgot what I was going to say. Again, I've just been sipping on caffeine over here, so I'm just letting the caffeine talk at this point. But um, yeah, I think just getting clear on what your intent with it is, and then also just understanding like what works for you, because you might have to try different things. Like if you're more of a physical person, that's where that like swaying and like that physical activity is gonna come in. Whereas like I usually find myself, I am that person that's just kind of like sitting in silence with no like with nothing. And if you came into my room, you'd be like, "Are you okay? Like what's going on over here?" But yeah, really depends on what you're trying to do. I really am trying to remember what I was going to say. But maybe it'll come to me like when we're in the middle of like a complete picture. Um so I think that brings us into the next kind of topic is, we have meditation, we have different ways you can meditate. So one of the other topics we had for today was about um, protecting yourself, protecting your mind. Um, I'm gonna talk about this more from a witchy viewpoint, because that's what I do. That's what I work with every day. And when you meditate in a space like that, you are altering. I'm trying to think of a way how to like phrase this in a way that makes sense. Like you are altering your mental state, which is essentially energy. And when you alter your energy, you're attracting energy that, I mean, like attracts like, right? Um, so if I'm meditating, um, I want to make sure that I'm protecting myself because I'm in a vulnerable state. We're in a vulnerable state when we're meditating, right? Whatever like form we're in a vulnerable state. So we want to make sure we're protecting our energy, um, just from anything. And even if you don't believe in like spirits or like spirit communication, there still is energy that's around you all day, every day. So if you're meditating, you also want to make sure that like protecting yourself, and you're protecting your mind and you're protecting your thoughts, because at the end of the day, your thoughts are your reality. So if you are, you know, something happens and you're waking up at 3 a.m. and you're having those terrible thoughts of like, oh, am I ever gonna like find another job again? May not seem like it. You don't think you're doing this to yourself, but the more you like ruminate on those things, you start to create a path for yourself and you start to create a reality for yourself. And then unbeknownst to you, you start inadvertently acting on those things. So I guess that was a long intro to what is protection and how do you protect your mind and your thoughts. It doesn't have to be particular to meditation in general. I'll let you guys take that one first. I feel like both of you work with energy a lot. And even if you don't believe in spirits or ghosts or whatever, I'm sure you can attest to the fact that like you have to protect your energy, uplift your energy.
I'm just gonna put this out there. There is invisible shit out there that you have no idea
Yeah.
about. Like there is stuff out there all the time. However, the lower frequency entity slash energy stuff, the lower frequency stuff, um, can really truly only uh, affect and influence you because you're an all powerful being. So that external energy stuff can only influence you or attach to you if you yourself are vibrating at a lower energetic state. That lower energetic state is of no fault of our own, usually. It could be health, it could be illness, it could be tired, it could be we had a few drinks on Friday night, it could be anything in normal life that brings you out of your sort of ecstatic state of well-being, vitality, healthy, mentally clear. So whenever you're dropping down, your vibration dropping down, you become available for these lower frequencies to attach and or influence on you. So the protection inherently has to do with your own energetic hygiene
Mhm.
for the most part, and how quickly you can bring yourself back to this higher vibrational state, which is in general above the influences of the mosquitoes, I like to call them, right? So the mosquitoes out there.
Zara
I'll
really
pass
just
the
took
baton.
my mumbling and then just put that in like a very easy to understand like explanation for you guys. That's pretty much yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Oh,
no, you go.
yeah. So I agree very much on that. With the caveat that it can be really hard to like not get angry or not get sad or
Right.
not want to take revenge or whatever, whatever kind of low frequency states there are, all the things. And so for me, and especially when I first started out in sort of the really the like energy world, um like sort of right at the beginning of my journey, and I've been a professional energy healer for 10 years, and so like at the very beginning of it, when I was really just like fumbling through the dark and the light,
Yeah.
um I started every day with programming my body. And you could think of it as setting intentions, but I just thought of it as like, I saw this quote from Heath Ledger, and he said, "When I'm acting, I act as though I'm in a studio with a switchboard, and I turn certain knobs up and turn certain knobs down." So every day, and at the time I was working at like this really lovely actually outdoor like produce stand, and it was kind of big, so it was like a market, it was like this big market, and I was seeing people all day long, and so I was interacting with so many people, and they were influencing me all day and with their their own things and their personalities and their entities they're carrying and all the things. And so on my way to work every day, I would ride my bike and I would say, okay, I want to turn up my empathy. I want to turn up to like 70% or whatever. I would want to turn down my impatience to 10%. So, like, because sometimes, like, these kind of things, impatience can serve us. Like, okay, things are, we got to move it forward, or. And so I would just kind of program my system the way that I felt like I wanted it to work. And I would actually program a reflective orb. So, okay, I'm going to program this silver reflective orb around me that reflects whatever people are bringing at me right back to them. And so, you can think of that as like a shield, but I really just more thought of it as like a mirror so that anybody that's coming at me or any entity that's coming at me is really going to just kind of get whatever frequency they're coming at me with reflected
Yeah.
back at them. And so I feel like that gave me a lot of space and freedom to be able to kind of explore how energy interacted. And as I got more like practiced with learning about energy and being able to read it and being able to really like, I wouldn't say control my emotions, more like the more trauma that I healed, the more that my emotions didn't flare up out of control. And so I would say also like another form of protection is just like really doing the shadow work, doing the trauma healing,
Yep.
doing getting into those things, seeing the trigger, what is the trigger, and digging into it and really trying to uncover it so that that becomes the protection, is the healing. But in the meantime, reflections and really just trying to kind of become the captain of one's vessel, I feel like are the most valuable things that I've learned personally.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you bring up because while we say that like, oh, there are negative emotions that we have and that we act on them. And I would even agree that like the more you act on these negative emotions, so you have anger, like you're feeling angry, you're like, okay, well, like I'm gonna go get revenge because like I'm pissed off, like I want to do something about that, right? I would say that the original emotion, like your original response, that's totally fine. Like we have emotions for a reason. That's just our physical bodies reacting to our environment and how we like process things. And a lot of times it's they protect us. They protect us from things. Like for some reason we've identified some kind of threat and we are responding to that threat in some way. Um, I think it's what you do after that that kind of uh, determines whether you're still kind of on that lower frequency or if you're going to be like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. I realize, and this kind of like also goes back to our topic of like meditating and mindfulness meditation, able to accept and understand what's happening and then going on from there. Um, One of the first things I learned when I started going to therapy to kind of help navigate some really intense like healing that I was going through is you really do get to choose. Like you have an emotion. Like, maybe you're feeling really sad. That thought comes up and you're just like, all right, I'm feeling really sad. From that moment, once you've identified that emotion, you get to choose. Am I going to sit here? Am I going to stay in bed and I'm going to ruminate on this all day? Or am I going to get up and take a shower? And another thing that you said, Lana, is it is not easy. It is not easy to make the, I want to call it like the higher frequency waste because it's really easy to stay in bed when you're feeling sad and it's real easy to just stay in bed and sleep it off. Um, but at the end of the day, like you do have a choice. And the more you start making those, I don't know if I want to call them like better choices, like maybe yes, but the more you start making those choices that are better for you, the easier it's going to get. And that's when you start, that's what I would call like that like protection. Start making those choices for yourself and you start protecting your energy and you start reacting to it in a way that's better for because that lower energy wants to keep you there and it's comfortable. And for some of us, like we've known that for a very long time. So I think that when we start to eventually get to a place where we're like, I don't know if I want to use the term like ascending, but like when you go on your spiritual journey and you're like, I want to be better. I want to know myself better. I want to be more like emotionally secure and stuff. That shit is not easy and it is one of the hardest things probably ever do in life. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. And in some cases, I almost tell people it almost feels wrong because everything in your mind is like this not I want you in bed still. You got to be in bed still. This is right. This is right for you. This is comfortable. If you get out of bed, that's scary. We don't know what's going to happen if we get out of bed. So it's terrifying. But when you do it, you start taking steps to be like, "Oh, I was actually like not in a good spot over." And this like so I don't know if I'm making sense, but I feel like you guys just do
Yeah.
a much better job at explaining it. But essentially, yes.
And I wanted to say to Lana, um, what a brilliant idea to turn your empathy up and turn your impatience down. I just love that. that idea of turning the knobs for your different frequencies. It's so simple. It's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah, because like really we can be the captains of our vessels, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
you
how do
get
we
to
do that? Well, we
choose.
have to, yeah, we gotta take charge, you know?
Yeah. Another like really interesting thing I saw, I know for some people social media is the devil, but for me, I just get all of everything I need to know. When I need a sign, I get it through social media. Maybe it's because I spend most of my time on social media. But anyway, um, I heard someone say in like a TikTok or something, they are essentially like when you go on your spiritual journey, you're trying so hard to get away from low negative energy, but then on Friday nights, you're going and you're spending your weekends with negative energy. And it really put into perspective that energy is not just what you can't see, it's also the people around yourself with. And for the most part, that's where most of it comes from is the people you spend your time with. If you are constantly spending your time around people who this might sound mean, I don't mean it to sound mean, but if you're always around someone who's complaining about everything, who's always seeing the negative of everything and verbalizing that out loud, you are surrounding yourself with that lower negative energy. um and that's just, if you keep doing that and you keep surrounding yourself with those people, you're just drawing more of that to yourself. So it's not
Yeah.
just about unseen energy, it's also very much about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
It has to do a lot with what you're going to allow. So there's a within each of us, there's a capacity for allowance. Like how much are we going to allow the negative current or the negativity around? Like how much are we going to allow? And it's not about kicking everybody out of your life, but
No.
it's about you finding your place where that doesn't exist, where
Yeah.
you can be in your peace, where you can be around people that are on the same vibe.
Yeah.
And there's always stuff to learn, and some of these negative people are triggering you for your own sort of inner exploration.
Yeah.
And also, some of them are triggering you because you've outgrown that environment and you really are meant to go. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult, it's very uncomfortable to be in those situations. This is an interesting conversation. So we moved from like the magical and we're coming right back into like the practical stuff, which is really the foundation of it. So like if you're not foundationally practicing good self-care, good mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic hygiene within yourself, like actually desiring more for yourself, more positivity, more joy, more glow, more um, pleasure, all of the good things in life. When you're seeking that and you're moving towards that, you're just naturally allowing that old stuff to fall away or those negative vibes to fall away. The other is your mind, the thoughts in your mind, which we talked about before. How much are you? How much negative self-talk is going on up there,
Yes.
and how much are you allowing? How much are you allowing yourself to beat yourself up? And you can start right just with that and unpack volumes
Yeah.
of um,
And
freedom, liberation.
that's a really great point you bring up about like, for me, the practical and the magical side of the things, like you can't have one without the other. And so if I am in situations in my daily life where I'm hanging out with people who, and as a side note, you might not realize it at the time. You might not realize that like you're stuck in this like low vibration with certain people because it may seem great to you. You may be like, I'm having a great time. Um, but if you are surrounding yourself with negative people in like your daily life, that is going to carry over into your magical practice. And I learned this the hard way. Um, I was going through a pretty intense, like depressive episode one time, and the people I was surrounding myself with, like it all feeds into each other. And so when I went to go do my spirit communication session, surprise, I was communicating communicating with things I probably did not want to. Because you attract that. So what you are doing in your physical everyday life, you are going to attract in magical practice. And that's why that concept of protection is so, so important. Um, Another thing I wanted to call out that I saw in chat was someone said, I can't think of a lower energy medium than TikTok and social media. And to me, this goes back to what do you allow in, though? Are you engaging with um, TikToks that bring down your vibration? Or are you liking cute cat and dog videos? Like those are great. Those make people feel good, right? Those are cute, happy things. And the more you interact with that content, the more it's going to show you, right? So if you're interacting with TikToks that are heavily revolving around like gossip or just like really sad things or just things that like don't bring you peace and don't bring you happiness, it's going to start. I mean, this is honestly a perfect example of TikTok is such a great example of energy. Algorithms are such a great example of energy because what you like and what you allow onto your feed, you will start getting more of. So for me, if I start noticing that there's like a certain trend that's popping up and I just don't like it, like I just swipe. The quicker you swipe, the less you're going to get out of it. If you're watching it and you're commenting on it and you're liking it, you're going to see more of it. I want to see the cute cat videos. I want to see the witchy topics where people are educating on tarot and astrology, and they're helping people. The more I start interacting with those accounts and those TikToks, the more of that I'm gonna. Now, granted, social media, that's its own thing, right? I probably do spend a lot more time on social media, good, but I can't think of a more perfect example to describe energy and what you allow into your space and into your life. I'm glad you brought that. Probably not the way you thought that conversation was going to go, but interesting thought.
And I think to like sort of summarize what both of you guys said, or I guess maybe what all of us said in some different ways, really the best self protection is having a self love kind of practice and being like really self aware and really just sort of honoring yourself above all else, really.
Yeah, and for some people that means giving yourself grace as well. So like if your self-love is not just like accepting all the things you love about yourself, it's accepting when you mess up and allowing yourself the grace to learn from that experience and not talk shit about yourself. You could say, I had a work meeting today and I reacted impulsively to something. That's not something that like I want to celebrate, but I could say I'm going to give myself the grace to understand that I'm human and I make mistakes. I'm going to learn the lesson I need to learn from this and I'm going to move on. That's self-love too. Is allowing yourself to make mistakes and grow from them.
Yes.
That's an excellent point. Um, and that's a really interesting so so that negative self-talk that we often experience
I
out there in
do
the
it a
world,
lot.
I don't I used to have it a lot. I don't have it so much anymore because I don't allow it so much anymore in my brain. So it's kind of like when that talk comes in, the last time that I really experienced very strongly, I missed my plane from New York City to California. I was missing the plane and I had plenty of time to get there and I have no idea why I missed it. But I walked away from the booth and I heard the thought in my head like you are a piece of garbage. I can't believe you did that. And it was so strong, that voice was so strong, that negative reprimand, that I almost like turned my head around to see if it was coming from outside of myself because it was so strong. And I said, you know, I don't, I basically said, get lost to the voice. Just because I missed my plane doesn't make me a piece of garbage. And that was it. But had I not done that, had I not recognized that voice was trying to make me feel like garbage, had I not done that, I could have stewed in that energy all day about missing the plane. But instead, it was like, I'm not having it, whatever, I'll get there when I get there.
Yeah.
And I got there when I got there without the stewing for 2 hours, feeling like I did something wrong. So
Yeah.
it's important to catch it
And
in the process.
it is. And I think, Lana, you said this earlier. Sometimes it can be hard to catch it enough because what starts to happen is you might have that thought and you might be like, oh, I missed my plane. Like, I'm a piece of garbage. And then you start saying that, and then you start believing you're a piece of garbage. So, your action, you are going to start doing things that will reinforce that idea that you're a piece of garbage. Even if you, like, you don't think that way. Like, you don't think that we're going to continue to, like, make garbage decisions, but our reality is what we think. And if we're telling ourselves we're garbage, we're just going to act like we're garbage. Um, but it is important to catch it early on because then you can kind of just say, like, oh, hey. And for me, it's often usually over, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's not the end of the world, you know? Most of these things that we beat ourselves up about are honestly kind of small. Um, and so there's situations like, I'm just going to use your example. I missed my plane, or be like, okay, this happens. Like, I'm not the only one in the history of ever who's missed a plane before. Um, and I'm choosing to not ruminate over this because the fact is, like, it doesn't change the fact that I missed my plane. Like, the outcome is still the same. I still have to wait for the next one. So I'm either going to sit here in the airport and I'm going to ruminate and be miserable and think I'm a piece of garbage, or I'm going to go explore the airport and maybe I find a really cool restaurant with really yummy food. And that's an experience I would have missed out on because I was too busy sitting there ruminating on how big of a piece of garbage I think I am. So when you start to allow yourself to get stuck, you miss out on life. I know that when I started my healing journey, one of the first things I said to my therapist was, I feel like I've wasted 30 years of life because I've just been stuck in this, like, phase of just giving in to that negative self-talk, and it's kept me very small. And I feel like so much has, like, passed by me that I've just out on because I wasn't just experiencing life. And that's what low energy does to you. It keeps you small. It keeps you from discovering really great airport restaurants. How expensive they are. Yeah. So yeah, really great points for sure.
And just to add one more thing on that note, when we do like allow ourselves to treat ourselves like that, that is literally the thing that gives permission to those outside of us to treat us like that,
And
whether
they
it's
will do it.
entities, absolutely, or whether it's other human beings, whatever, whether it's just like the energy, the universe, what the universe gives back to us. When we do that to ourselves, it becomes reciprocal.
Yep. And
It is.
it's
Thank you for saying that. That was on my mind because it
it's
opens the door.
this is
Yeah.
really important for people pleasers. Because this doesn't apply to just, like, things that you think are negative and negative self-talk. This also applies to things like um wanting to, like, people please to the point of your own discomfort. And this is probably, I'll try not to, like, derail the topic too much because this is probably a topic for, like, boundaries, but also what are boundaries other than, like, protecting yourself, right? Um, so people pleasing to the point of your own discomfort because you, whatever reason you're doing, you want to keep the peace, or, like, you're convinced that you need to keep these low vibrational people and these entities alive. So your mind is going to do whatever it can to, like, keep that energy because it's uncomfortable to step out of it again. So I learned this very recently. One of the things that I wanted to say earlier is, while you do attract negative energy and negative people to yourself by ruminating in it, there's also lessons to be. The universe is giving it to you because it's trying to teach a lesson. So if you have someone come into your life and I don't feel like really good about this. There's a lesson to be learned there, and sometimes that lesson is you're not setting proper boundaries for yourself and you need to learn how to do that. Um, and most of the time, that looks like you need to walk away from the situation. But when you're stuck in that like low vibration, you don't want to. You want to hold on to those people like your life is going to be ruined if they leave. Um, but yeah, I could go off on a tangent there, but it's an important part that like there's a lesson to be learned. Learn the lesson and then get rid of the energy. Because there is, I
Yeah.
promise there's some lesson you need to learn, especially if it's a pattern. If it keeps coming back. So for example, say Lana and I are best friends for the longest time, but for some reason, like we just never feel good when we're hanging out with each other. And that relationship dissolves. We finally like go our separate ways. Now I'm like best friends with Zara, and the same things are happening. Like we're so close, but we just don't feel good when we hang out with each other. There's lessons that need to be learned there, and it's usually that you are just surround yourself with energy that you need to grow out of. There is power in spoken word and your word choices and what you say out loud. So with that, if you find yourself ruminating or negative self-talk in your mind, counteract that by saying nice things about yourself out loud and keep doing that because there is power to spoken word. So something helps you. Like if I'm by myself and I have a thought like, oh, in my head silently, I'm a piece of garbage. I'll say out loud, wait a second. I'm not a piece of garbage. And it's almost kind of like you're having a conversation with yourself because essentially you are. If there's other people in your house, they might think you're crazy, but it doesn't really matter what they. If it helps you, it helps you. So spoken word's really powerful. That's
I would
why.
even say that basically all words are spell casting, no matter what. Like you're
Yeah.
just spell casting all day
Yeah,
long.
yeah. I wish the spell
I did a
casting
lot
worked on my dogs, though. I wish when I told them to stop barking, it would work, but only works on yourself, not on other people.
right. Yeah. I did a lot of spell casting in my earlier years. I first got into Wicca. A lot of candles, a lot of ritual stuff, and I absolutely love it. It's so fun to do all of that stuff. Um, and then my own practice evolved sort of out of that. But what I really got from the spell casting was that our minds are so powerful. Our words
Yes.
are so powerful. Our intentions are so powerful. And the tools of the spell cast, the candles, the knives, the incense, the herbs, the crystals, whatever it is that we're wanting to play with and set up the stage, gathering all of those things and just creating the ceremony, it's all about focusing your mind. It's
Yep.
all about focusing your mind, your energy, and your potency into this ceremony and this ritual, and then your belief that it is done. And so you don't necessarily need all of the hoopla of the spell casting, although it's such a joy to do. You don't necessarily need it. It is the mind that's doing it. It is the intention that's doing it. It is the belief that's doing it. And when you're talking about protection, that too is in the belief and in the field and in the intention. So if you have an intention or if you have a thought or an idea that the whole world is out to get you and you're always being attacked and yada 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 yada, all of that stuff, there's a consciousness within you that believes that about themselves. That's where the healing, the deep, deep healing comes in, is to really find these pieces of our being that believe that we need to be punished oftentimes.
Yeah.
So when we go into past life readings and some of these karmic wound healings that we do, like oftentimes we'll find either in this lifetime or a past lifetime an experience of the soul that the soul had that it hasn't forgiven itself for. And so it attracts punishment
Yep.
on a real unconscious level. And it has belief systems that it deserves it or that this is all that exists in the world. And so there's all these different layers to why you may be experiencing energies that you don't want to experience. Lana,
Yeah.
did you want to say something?
Oh, not necessarily.
I had something, and I had to like walk out there and tell Luna to knock it off. But yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I actually didn't really entertain the idea of past lives until very um mainly through like a really intense tarot reading that I got. And a lot of things just started clicking, but I've been reading a lot on this idea of like the earth school and how we essentially like, and I'm still not really sure like what my beliefs are on the topic, but how we essentially like reincarnate into the earth school, which is the human experience, over and over until we feel like we've, I don't know, graduated from like the universe college or something. And that it's this idea that like you keep living lives until you learn the lessons you're supposed to learn. Um so that's always been a concept for me. But also like your point, Zara, something you said is like we're always punishing ourselves when we get things wrong, when in reality it's just a learning that we just need to come and forward with. Now I will say sometimes like there are mistakes that have bigger consequences than others. Um, but really, all you can do at the end of the day is whatever's in your control, take care of it. Whatever's not in your control, learn from it and just kind of go forward. And I know that's a very like simplistic view of the whole thing, but if you find yourself making what you consider to be catastrophic mistakes all the time, it might be helpful to understand what lesson you're simply just not grasping, because usually it's a lead up to it, right? Like it's one thing that trickles into another, that trickles into another. um when you trying to think of an example that's maybe not so, like if you stop caring for something, I don't know, like one of your electronics or something, you buy something and then you stop caring for it and you start like not cleaning it, it's essentially just going to stop working. And then if it stops working, like use a smartphone. I'm really bad at analogies, but we're just going to go with this. If you buy a smartphone and you don't take care of it, it's gonna stop working. And then it's okay, that's mistake number one. But maybe like it stops working, and so now you can't receive calls. Like maybe because you can't receive calls, you miss something important at work or something. And so it's just the point that I'm trying to make is it's always just like this trickling snowball effect. So something that started very small can get very, very big because we didn't take care of it when it was down here and it was a baby seed thing in our head. Hopefully that. Don't ever let me try to do analogies. They never work. But so I think that's pretty much a good like what we were trying to do with these is keep them to about like an hour and a half, and we're about at the hour and a half mark now. But just wanted to check in to see if we had like any last thoughts on meditation or protection before we move on, or if anyone in chat has anything further that they wanted to add. As we go on, this will be less scuffed, I promise. First episode stuffs are always rough. Any other last thoughts?
I mean, I feel pretty complete. I think that, just remembering that really the two things are very related. So meditation and protection, and like how having a meditation practice will actually help or can actually help with your protection because it's part of like taking care of yourself and helping yourself actually become more sensitive the energies around you and the world around you, because when we do quiet our like our sort of more physical 3D self, the that really active mind and the active body, and we sort of step into this different state, we are expanding our awareness, and that can actually help with the protection, and vice versa. When we do learn to protect ourselves, whether that be through self-love practices, through throwing up a shield or programming our minds or whatever, um, that contributes to the ability to meditate clearly and to meditate more. I don't want to say successfully because it's not like a competition, but you know, they're two sides of a
Oh, and yeah, Coldrake said, I hope Rune has made notes for the many topics that may be part of later episodes. I did not make notes, and if you know me well, you know that what I said 5 minutes ago, I've already forgotten. So, um, but the hosts, we meet frequently. We keep in contact with each other, so we're always talking about topics that we want to talk about in the future. I think our next one we had planned, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were going to have a tarot episode, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was episode number 2, but we'll get back to you guys on that. But with that,
I
I
didn't hear
do.
that topic.
Huh? What was that?
I didn't hear the topic. What did
I
you say
think
the
it was.
topic was
I
for
think
next?
it was tarot. I think we wanted.
Oh, tarot.
I think that's what we said, but we'll figure that out and then we'll let you guys know. Um, but with that, thank you for joining our first episode. We plan to do these every 2 weeks, the same time, the same day. So our next one would be, pull up my calendar because I can't.
Wednesday the 17th.
There you go. Wednesday the 17th. And topic to be determined. We'll let you guys. First episode went pretty well. We'll find our groove a little bit more, and now that I have everything set up on the Twitch side, it's good to go. So hopefully we won't have any more audio problems in the. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Again, I'm Rune, and I'll let my other co-hosts say their goodbyes.
Goodbye from New York. Zara Starchild.
Yeah, it's late for you now. You're like, I'm gonna go to bed.
Oh, this has been such a pleasure. I hope to do this many more times and to feel you all out there in the world joining us. So thank you all so much.
So excited. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. But yeah, we will see you guys. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Hi, everybody.